Hello, everybody. So this is part 2 of the dead money, whatever I was talking about last episode. Yeah, part 2 of these cash games from the last 3 days. So we're into Friday, May 2nd. May 2nd's a big day because it's the 27-year anniversary of my bar mitzvah. 13-year-old boy becoming a man at the synagogue. Now, I'm one of those Jews who never really cared about being Jewish, but always has to tell everyone he's Jewish. So that's, because I want people to stereotype me. Anyway, so Friday had a number of important hands, although only a few of them are worth talking about. But before we get to any of the run good, run bad, I get in there on Friday morning and Squeaky is playing at the win. I haven't seen Squeaky in a while. And fuck me, because there's only 2 games going, and I'm probably going to end up on his table, and God, I just don't want to play with Squeaky. He's so fucking loud. But check this. They didn't have a dealer. They were short on dealers, so I was just waiting for over an hour, which sucked, of course, but then we opened a new table finally. I mean, it was incredible. I was first name on the list for like an hour and 20 minutes. 2 8-handed games, nobody left. So I got to fade dealing with Squeaky. I mean, if I play with Squeaky, I would look to slow roll him back, do everything you got to do, but I would just rather launch him into orbit. But so, all right. First hand from Friday starts with a raise to 15, and there's a call, and I got kings in the big blind. I 3-bet to 75. The razor folded, and the guy who called again, and the caller is a fish whose decisions tend to correlate to his mood. He's not a reg, but I've seen him in spurts before, so he's just like a reg visitor. Seems mostly nitty post-flop, but is loose, and he just kind of fucks up a lot in general, and he's been on a bit of a losing rush, so I thought he might be getting ready to pop. So flop comes 10-6-3, 2 diamonds and a spade. I have a diamond. And I've been c-betting these spots more often lately, but this time I checked. Now, I guess it seems like I should bet since I just told you the guy is liable to be starting to unravel, but I kind of got the sense that if his hand was good enough to call, then I don't know, he might just bet if I check to him. And even if he checks back with a hand that would have folded, even though it's always tilting when you throw in these traps and they don't work, or at least not right away, he still might improve to something I'm ahead of, so he checks back, and the turn is a jack. Now there's 2 flush draws, spades and diamonds. Pot is 160, and now I bet 125, and he works it for a little while, and he raises big. He makes it 500. And he says he's only got like 220 left. I'm surprised in hindsight as to how long I thought about this, because realistically, the only hand I lose to should be Jack 10 in the top 2 pair, and I figured it's unlikely he'll check top pair in position when it's only top pair of 10s. So in all likelihood, he has either a draw or he's just going nuts with a jack. So I go all in. He doesn't snap call for some reason, but he calls, and the river is another jack, but every draw bricked. So I'm holding my breath here, but kings won. So it would appear that time the flop check worked very well. I mean, he still may have called flop with something that would then turn a lot more equity, presumably, but either way, yay. And also seeing as he made such a huge semi-bluff raise on the turn, I guess it's at least a little surprising that he didn't just bet the flop. Anyway, whatever. It's in the game for a little while, and I was doing pretty good, but the game was kind of boring, and looking around, there were some other games that looked better, so I table changed. Felt a little reluctant to do that, though, because I had a pretty good read on the table I was in, but that doesn't mean my EV on this table is at its highest. We got to do the whole rounders thing. Play the game, get it for what it's worth, and then move on and go find something else. So it took a little while, but after I got my table changed, I was glad because my new table was quite sick. The first hand I got into was in my first orbit. A fishy-looking old guy limped early position, and I raised to 25 in the cutoff with pocket nines, and then the button 3-bet to 80. It folded to me, and I called, and we're deep. Now, this three-better he was actually with me the day before when I got really hot at the end and won that huge pot with King 6 of clubs against Buck. I was only with him for an hour or two, though, and I guess he just seemed okay. He was European, too. He saw some of my hands go to showdown, so he was aware that I'm not just a nit. But I also didn't get the sense that he was going to knock himself senseless to make sure he fights me to the death. So today, though, he 3-bets me a call with the nines. The flop is 10-7-7, 2 spades. I have a spade. I check and he bets 75. I already had kind of a weird feeling, but I can't fold this hand just yet, so I call, and the turn was pretty nifty. It's 6 of spades. So 9-8 of spades is now a straight flush. But rather than check, I did something I don't do that often as a bluff here, and that was lead. I think I bet 215. And before I did that, he rechecked his card, so that's probably a spade check. I wasn't counting on this bet winning the pot now, and he called, so I'm gearing up now to bring a big one, but the river heavily prevented me from doing that because it was an ace. So if he has ace-king with 1 spade, whichever spade it is, he's not folding that. Could have aces fold, too. So really, the only hands that I can make fold are kings, queens, or jacks, with or without a spade. Or if he just has king 10, queen 10, jack 10. Pot is around 740 or 750, and I bet 490. And the hands that I just mentioned are not going to be thrilled about this, so while I was hoping to get to bet really big on the river, I mean, at this point, it just didn't seem like it would make that it would make that much sense to do that, because if those hands are willing to fold, this is probably only as big as I need to go, but he doesn't think that long, and he calls. And just like that, I lost everything I had been winning to that point. But you know what this fucking guy had? 10-9 offsuit. Okay. Well, I finally figured out that out of all the things that tilt me the hardest, it's this. Just as I said yesterday, the most satisfying thing is when you just pummel the shit out of a reg who's just trying to beat you, but you're better than them. They're a step ahead of them, and you're just taking them to the fucking town. That's the most satisfying thing. And on the flip side, the most tilting thing is when regs, thinking players, winning players, pros or whatever, I mean, which is something I guess I presume this guy to be, go unnecessarily outside the box against you as a means of, like, overcompensating for what they think you play like and doing things that are just plain stupid. We know the fish are going to make massive blunders constantly, and they're going to have their heaters. But that's just the cost of doing business sometimes. This is completely different because it's a reg. And just because you have the button, and you see I'm raising from the cutoff over an early position limp from a fish, and you know that I could be opening fairly wide, doesn't make it sensible for you to start 3-betting trashy hands. Yes, he saw me do some creative things the day before, but he also saw I'm putting a lot of thought into everything I'm doing. So it's not as if I'm just some reckless maniac. In other words, you don't need 10-9 offsuit in your 3-betting button range against me. And it gets so much worse because I think about how, without the benefit of a cooler, he managed to get 3 streets from me? I mean, this is like hitting the trifecta. First, he outflops me with his 3-outer coming 10-7-7 spade, which, by the way, isn't even a flop he has to bet, but okay, he bet it. Then he gets the 6 of spades on the turn, which enticed me to start bluffing probably more than any other card would have, because I'm going to have flushes more often than he will, and I block 9-8. And plus, in his mind, since he's 3-betting me so sputardedly light, he has to figure I can have either a slow-played 7 on the flop that is now betting for protection, knowing it's not likely to be raised, or maybe I turn to boat with 6s. I mean, maybe I turn the straight with 9-8. But he calls in spite of having a really dicey hand now. And not that I think he should just be folding this every time without hesitation. No. But then he gets to the river. And not only does he fade all the cards that would have given me a better hand or at least a chop with him, and that's going to come in one of the other 30% of the time. He also gets one of the only rivers that's going to kind of force me to use a smaller size to put a little less pressure on him. But the sickest part is, he calls me with this hand on the river. And he does not get to this river with a hand better than pocket nines that's also worse than the one he has. In other words, if he's calling with this hand, then he's calling with every hand. If he's not folding 10-9 off, no spade, then why would he fold jacks, spade, or no spade? He has 0 folds on this river. And that is incapable of having any sensibility. Now, the funny thing is, it's true that if I did have something like, King Jack of spades, or Knight 8 of spades, or not in spades, or Ace X of spades, any of the hands I'm representing, that I actually would not have just called this 3-bet. I wouldn't have these hands. I'd have folded those or 4-bet. So I really wouldn't have a flush with this line I've taken, which makes his call seem really good. But he doesn't know that that's how I'm going to go about this because he never saw me until yesterday. And because of that, that just makes his river call, it looks brilliant, but it's just a total button click that happened to be perfect. He basically just thought, oh, well, it's this guy, so I'm just going to start doing stuff with crappy hands. It doesn't matter that my planning is so poorly put together with no actual thought put into it. What matters is I'm not going to sit here and do nothing with my bad hands because this guy doesn't mind being aggressive. That's the fucking strategy that went into this. And he gets this run out and winds up winning a huge pot with this fucking garbage hand. And I'm guessing one of the biggest reasons he called is because he had the 9 blocker to the 9-8 straight. Doesn't block flushes, but he blocks the straight. Look, I guess I don't know enough about this guy to just judge too many things, but as far as this little first impression goes, let's just keep playing. Just because you look like a genius sometimes does not mean that you were one. So that hand really unsettled me because it's just like, you're a reg and this is what you think you should be doing against me? Like, I told you, I thought he wasn't eager to get into it with me the day before, but obviously he had no problem with it. Alright, so I'm trying to maintain composure, and, it's also just occurred to me that my emotions run so fucking high when I play, but it goes hand in hand with the fact that I'm trying just as hard to keep them under control. I let myself feel them, but usually I keep it under control. So then this new-faced white guy looks to be in his 40s. He races to 20 from early-ish middle position. One of the fish calls, and I make it 105 with jacks in the big blind, and they both call. Pot has 315, and the flop comes 5-5 deuce, 2 clubs, and I have a club. And I decide to check this overpair as well because, I don't know, I just wanted to fucking check. I knew the flag was up on me, and everyone thinks I'm just some bluffing spaz, so that's a good idea to bet, but I also thought it would be a good idea to now, go reverse. So the original raiser bets 130, and he's got about 800 left. And the fish is thinking for a while, and he just stacked off and had rebought. And first I was getting nervous about him, but then I realized, don't be nervous about him. So he calls. I didn't think that was a Hollywood, so now I raise to 600, and the open raiser rejams immediately. The fish folds. I have to call. And the turn and river were both clubs, including a king, so now I have the third highest flush. Not sure if that's a good thing. And he turns over pocket queens, no clubs. Well. That was lucky. Get it in with 12% and win. Now, of course, I hate winning this way. And the first thing I thought was because I was rattled from the 10-9 offhand that maybe I had just punted here. But after talking with a couple people right after, no, this was not a punt at all. This was a total setup. A total cooler that I just so happens to run good in. And it's really fucking sick that I had to get this much money and beat because he had the literal one hand that has me beat but isn't going to 4-bet. You see so little trapping from kings and aces pre-flop from so many people, and this guy did not look the part of someone who would be the next one. But if he had, like, pocket 8s, 9s, or 10s, the action of all this, I think, was pretty likely to play out identically. I mean, he just happened to be at the top of his range, and I got there. And then I thought later that night, after smoking some weed, that the fish get lucky sometimes because they have to, but the pros get lucky sometimes because they deserve to. And I've said this before, how it's almost like uncanny that time after time after time, when I either lose a big bluff or just decide to show one, and now everyone thinks I'm this crazy aggro fiend and they all can't wait to get stacks in me with anything, that like within an hour or a whole lot less than that, like today, then I find myself with a big hand in a spot where I think I got somebody in deep shit, only to find out that they have me totally fucked and I lose a pot way bigger than I would have ordinarily. And that is exactly what happened again. I get tricky with a big pocket pair. I think I'm setting someone up, but no, he just has queens. This time I ran good. It has to happen, and I deserve it. And normally I would, of course, rather not have the jack of clubs since it lowers the chances of him having a flush draw, but it sure comes in handy if he doesn't have a flush draw or any club with or without a bigger pair. So that break, of course, calmed me down. After that, not too much happened. I mean, the game was kind of boring. There was one hand where I raised the button with 10-6 suited and flopped a straight against a small blind. 2 diamonds are on the flop. It was, it was 7-8-9, 2 diamonds. He check called, and the turn was king of diamonds. Possible flush now. Pot's 100, and he check raised me. I bet 100, and he made it 250. And I just folded right here. I mean, it's a nitty player, and I have a ton of strong hands that I'm using this size, and it just seems really hard for this particular guy to have a bluff. He doesn't like doing that. And when you're in spots like this one, you can just always fold. I mean, he could have been bluffing, maybe ace of diamonds 10x or ace of diamonds jack x, but I don't think I need to force him to show that to me. And if he was going to bluff, he might just be the type to come out leading into me himself rather than check raise and, now have to put that much more money in. So I won a nice little chunk on Friday as well, although a lot less than Thursday's outburst of hands at the end, which brings us to Saturday. And what a doozy Saturday turned out to be. Well, first I got to fade Squeaky again. He was there again on Saturday morning. I have a feeling he's going to be there in the mornings a lot for a while now. He's always there in streaks. Fuck. I'm trying to get back on the day schedule, too. But, whatever. I'd say within 30 minutes of this game, the action folds to the aforementioned Bulgarian reg in the cutoff. I mentioned him in part 1 of this nonsense. He raises to 15, and I 3-bet King Jack off on the button to 50, and he called. And Bulgaria, he likes to open to either 15, but sometimes he goes 20. And when he goes 20, usually has a bigger hand. And I've also noticed more recently that he's been opening a little wider. Now, as far as his play goes, I mean, he God modes every day that I see him. I never see this guy lose. I never see him have to deal with anything. And once again, he had piles. And he's a daytime player or two, and it's like 11 a.m. And he's just mowing everyone down once again. But he's generally on just the nitty side. His thinking level doesn't seem that high. I mean, I never see him bluff. And in fact, a year ago, I folded kings pre-flop to him correctly. He raised to 20 instead of his usual 15. I made it 80 in the big blind. And we were only 4-handed, by the way. And he made it 400, 4-betting from the button when we're like 2,200 deep. And he had like 1 or 2 hands before that just lost a hand to me for 3 streets in a single race pot. And it was just like, okay, I think this guy is just trying to rep tilt. And when I looked at him for a few seconds, since I was, thinking about this for a little bit, he didn't seem like nervous at all about a single thing. He just looked like some guy who was just waiting for his money. Like he wasn't remotely perturbed by the fact that I've been thinking for a while. So I folded. And he showed aces. And still has no idea just how thoroughly owned he was. He's Bulgarian, but He has a Russian accent and a Russian name, and he has like, "What'd you have, tins?" I said, I didn't even answer him. And I was just like, yeah, I probably said, yeah, something like that. I don't know. I didn't tell my kings, though. No way. Anyway, so he calls my 3-bet. He's out of position, which I often see him do with marginal hands that don't play well in this spot. And the flop comes ace-9-8 rainbow. So I whiff rather hard, but find myself in a spot where I'm likely going to be willing to go nuts. I do have some backdoor hope. First, he check calls 60. Now the turn is a 7. And there's 2 hearts now, and I have the jack of hearts. He checks again. And I'd be checking back a lot of stuff here, whether I have a strong hand or not. But having the jack was important, very important. So I bet again 200, planning to fire big on a lot of rivers because I figure he's going to have to fold a lot of rivers as he'll have a lot of pair plus hands that missed or just a weak ace. So he calls, pot of 620. And the river is a total brick. It's a deuce. He checks one more time, and the first thing that came to mind was jam. And if I do so, that's going to be about 1,200 and just close to 2 times the pot. And I know that Bulgarian knows that I'm not especially nitty, but I don't think he's ever seen me lose big bluffing, but I could be mistaken. I would say no, though. But either way, I just figured, you know what, I probably don't need to jam. I mean, so I slightly went over pot with 670, which is still pretty big and going to put a lot of hands in unhappy spots, but he called relatively fast and he beats me with ace-10 offsuits. This tilted me even more than Mr. 10-9 off from the day before. I mean, post-flop, what Bulgaria did is fine. I'm not saying he should have folded that hand post-flop because I am going to be over-bluffing a shit ton. And I think I know why he called. I mean, consciously or not, he's thinking he's just too high up in his range to be folding this hand to me on the river. Especially with the blocker in his hand. I had the jack, he had the 10. But it made me so very, very sick because I can't know if jamming would have worked, but I think it would have. But either way, it doesn't matter because it's just the best size to use here because that's the size it's going to take to make him fold, this exact hand. I mean, his 10-9 suiteds, 10-8s, and 7-6s, all those hands that are pair and straight draws and miss, all those hands are going to fold to any real size. But hands like ace-10 or 9-7 or 8-7, the small 2 pairs, they're not necessarily ready to fold unless I really bring the house. But the reason why it's also tilting, and even more so than Mr. 10-9 off, because Mr. 10-9 off was at least 3-betting in position. But Bulgaria, I mean, his call pre-flop out of position, he's setting himself up to be punished so hard. I know this guy respects me, but the configuration of cutoff versus button, it doesn't matter. No matter how well you play pre-flop and how smartly constructed your range is, you are not going to be able to avoid being put in the most ridiculous and bizarre conundrums post-flop. It is going to happen no matter what you do. And that is why it is imperative you don't mess around with these fucking so-so hands in 3-bet pots out of position against people who you know are both competent and aggressive. You are asking for trouble. You are on both knees begging for it. Bulgaria's strategy and the strategy of so many players in the 2-5 player pool is to call 3 bets out of position and then just check and guess the whole hands when they're marginal like they're often going to be, or just fold when they're really weak, and then just raise when they're nutted. Not going to bluff that often, if ever. Just check and guess. And that is just the worst strategy you can come up with. It has no chance of doing anything but getting wrecked. He should just fold or 4-bet. His hand does not flop well, and he's going to be forced to fold on so many runouts, even if he knows I'm overbluffing, because what's he going to do? Just call down with ace high and lose to a bunch of bluffs along the way? Not to mention, there's all these other times he's going to wind up with the second best hand a lot when he does improve, and then he's not going to know what to do then. But all he was thinking about, and so many others, are what can happen in the best case scenario, even though the best case scenario isn't going to come around that much. This is just about expected value, and his EV in this spot is no bueno. He's just thinking I know this guy likes the 3-bet, so I can't let him push me around, but I don't want to 4-bet, but all right, I'll just call. It's terrible. And he's lucky I fucked up by not jamming river, because oftentimes I would have. I mean, and then we'll see what he does when I'm going in for 1200. I mean, I guess by going 670, I was just trying to like represent a wider value range, because if I jammed, then I'm afraid he's going to think I'm only repping Jack 10. And then not think it's possible I could do this with set or like top two pair or really any two pair. But I can second guess my river size all I want. I mean, the bottom line is his thought process for how to proceed was so poorly planned from the start. So I shouldn't think that this result matters as much, even though the pot was big. He made a stupid call pre that sets himself up to get fucked. He flops an ace, he held on, and he won. The end. He's a nice guy, too. He's cool, but... oh, God. Then the next hand, he raises pre and no one calls, and he shows pocket tens. And then he says, just running hot all morning. And I almost asked him this, and I wish I did, but I just bit my tongue. But I almost asked, is that why you called, because you're running hot? I doubt the answer was yes, but if that had anything to do with why he called, even in the most minimal of ways, if that had any factor into this, then he has reached a whole new level of buffoonery. And people call sometimes for reasons dumber than that. But you're never hot or cold. Like you are, but you're not, because every hand is independent. I mean, sure, you're always hot or cold until suddenly you're not. So, alright. So I got myself stuck right away. Gives me something to do for a while. And just like the day before, I was rattled because a reg chose to be an idiot and came out smelling like a brick oven New York pizza. So I raised a couple hands I normally wouldn't play. Whatever. Got a little back with the image when I raised to 30 under the gun with King 9 of hearts. The straddle was on, and two players called. One was a young Asian reg who I'd never seen, and the other was the classic-looking 50-year-old white guy who isn't going to be good at poker. The flop is ace-10 deuce, rainbow. I got the backdoor nut flush draw. But we all check, although the white guy came close to betting, and then he changed his mind. The turn is the 3 of hearts, so alright, 1 of heart away now. And I almost bet, but I didn't think I'd get a worse hand to fold, so I checked. Asian kid bets small, 25. The other guy calls, and I call. I get there on the river with the flush, but it's another 10 as well. And it seems like a pretty solid spot to check, because either player can have a flush or a 10. But there are things that can go wrong here, because if the Asian reg has a 10, he may not want to bet with both of us having called and the flush hits. Be hard for neither of us to have it. And if the white guy has a 10 and we both check, then he may just check, because people of that profile do that all the fucking time. They never go for thin value on the river, ever, whether it's correct to or not, with anything. So it was just a chance I was afraid to take. So I just bet big. I bet almost 2 times the pot, going 300. And the Asian reg thought for a long time before he folded. And the white guy called right away, and I won. But as I was turning my hand over, I saw the Asian reg was really curious to see my hand. So I don't know. Maybe he folded a 10. I mean, if he had a 10, I don't know why he bet so tiny on the turn. But either way, I really don't know if I missed a ton of value or not from the other guy, because if I check raise this flush, and if say he has one too, and he definitely could have had one, I mean, he's not going to fold that. But I guess I can see him having trip 10s too, since he did almost bet the flop. Either way, though, I think checking river's probably a little better overall, but it's close. And if he did have 3 10s, he'd probably just call thinking, oh, it's this guy I have to call. But even with this winning hand, and even with playing tight for a while after bluffing off to Bulgaria, I still got the sense that no one at this table was going to want to fold to me. And it was fucking with me a lot. For like one hand, this fishy-looking middle-aged Euro guy raises a 15. I make it 50 with a 7 of clubs, and he calls out of position. And the flop is King, Jack, 9, 2 hearts, and a diamond. So I whiffed completely. I mean, you give me a worse flop than this one, right? But even so, it's still a board I might just go crazy on, because the pool tends to just check and fold eventually, because you're repping a very credible range, and they're marginal. But between the image and how hard I whiffed, and how many runouts he's going to improve on anyway that he may have folded, that he would have folded if he didn't improve, I mean, this This is not the worst hand to just check back the flop and turn and river with, which were both total bricks, but it's just annoying because I lose to ace-9 of spades. And it's the perfect example of a hand I might just try to run over with a million hands, over bluffing constantly, but doing so successfully because this is how the field plays. So then I get pocket jacks under the gun. I raise to 20. That Asian reg from before called again, and the small blind called. And the small blind was the guy I stacked the day before my bar mitzvah anniversary with the kings when I checked the flop after 3-betting out of position. So anyway, in this hand, the flop comes ace-6 deuce rainbow, and we all check. And the turn is another ace, and it's a second spade. Then the small blind almost bet, but he checked. And I bet 40, liking my chances now. And he called. And the river is a jack. Okay. And now he leads into me for 200 into 140. He overbets. And he's got to have at least an ace. And we're deep. I was afraid to go for the home run at first because I just thought it would be so obvious that I have it, but I decided I have to because A, I don't think he's folding an ace, and B, if he has 6s or 2s for a low full house, then he's definitely not folding. So I jam. It was another 1264 to be exact, about 2.3 times the pot. Thinks for a while. He's hurting, but he calls, and then he shows he had the pocket 2s, and yeah, that's a tough river for him. And then it took the dealer about 45 minutes to pay off the pot because first he wanted to pay me all in cash that he was taking out of his pocket and keep the chips in front of him, which I told the dealer he cannot do because the max buy-in is $1,500. He has to pay me in the chips, which would now put him below $1,500. And then he can top up to $1,500 if he wants, which he did. But if he just keeps all those chips, he's going to be above the $1,500 max, and I don't care if it's a fish. The rules are rules. So, whatever. Just like that, I'm basically even. But then a little while later, he asked me. He said, and he's got some kind of European accent too. He's like, I see you play here a lot. He's like, would you have called with my hand? And I should have just told him, yes, absolutely. But I gave him an honest answer and said, no, I don't think so. Also known as absolutely not. And he's like, the more I think about it, I need to just fold. He's like, you can have ace-jack. But then he added he didn't think it was possible at all for me to have pocket jacks, and okay. But look, thank God I went for the jam, because if, say, I'd only raised the pot, he would have just called with the deuces. He would not have re-raised. And in hindsight, if he did have only an ace, I'm guessing he probably wouldn't have played it quite like this. And if I did have an ace, I probably wouldn't have. But if I did, depending on how big the kicker was, I think I'd still raise, but not go all in. But this is what happens in the 2-5 player pool. They seldom, if ever, make a hero fold. And when they do, they're usually wrong, because their head is just up their ass 90% of the time they play anyway. So the very next hand, after this huge double up, now I have ace-queen of diamonds in the big blind. There's a raise to 15, and there's several calls, including the small blind, who was a brand new player, but I saw him the day before. I played with him yesterday, but very briefly. I 3-bet to 110 and figured I was going to take it here, but the small blind called again. Then the flop was king, king, 3 rainbow with the backdoor flush draw. He check called 110. Pot is 470. Turn was a brick. It was a 9. Now we both checked. And the river was another small brick. We checked, and I lost the pocket 8s. And this is another hand I fucked up because maybe I was just so relieved that I just doubled up and I didn't want to just bluff it all off again the very next hand, but it's a good spot to just rep ace-king and double barrel the turn. And just make him fold all the pocket pairs just like the one he has. The field does that all the time. Now, had the river also been, say, a jack or a 10, I may have jammed the river there once he checks again as a bluff, and, that might catch his attention a little more. He might think I have jacks or 10s. So, checking turn isn't like a total surrender for the whole hand, but people don't like stacking off light, and I don't know, I guess I just got my head a little thinking because it's a new player that he can have anything, and I don't know how likely he is to fold anything marginal, so I double up with a cooler. I'm on the right side of it, and then I immediately fuck up again. Then the early position limps. I raise to 25 with jack 10 of spades. The big blind calls. That was the guy I just doubled up against, and the limper called. And that was the other Euro. A lot of Euros lately. The Euro I mentioned just before when he beat me with the ace-9 of spades. Those two guys. So the flop here is queen 9-7, 2 spades, and I have the open-ended straight flush draw. Yahtzee. They check, and I bet 65, and they both call, and the turn is another 7. No spade. So they check, and I check back. I mean, maybe I could have considered betting again, but you just really don't want to get raised against a 7, so, I mean, checking back can't be that bad. The river is yet another deuce. Total brick. They check. And I kind of got the sense neither one had anything, but this is really not a good spot to bluff overall because neither one is going to fold a pair. So I check, and I lose to the big blind. We both lose to the big blind, who had king 8 of spades. He beat us with king high, and the guy had not only a higher flush draw than me, he had not just one, but both of my fucking straight flush outs. Now look, I can't complain that much. It's not like a spade came. That would have been ugly, but god damn it. Chickening out of yet another bluff and losing to this fucking bullshit. And I've gotten better in the last year about losing bluffs, but continuing to fire them because people will still fear that this is the hand you have it. So I continue to just lose some more pots. I'm getting stuck again. And then comes this hand. The Asian kid straddles. I limp 8-7 of spades in the small blind, and we go 5 ways. And the flop is queen 3-5 rainbow. I have the backdoor flush, so I have a lot of helpful turn cards. We check to the cutoff, and he bets 10. I raise to 55, loving the spot. Except then the Asian reg in the straddle calls. Fuck. Now, I'd been thinking earlier in the day that in spite of the big bluff I lost early with the king-jack, that I actually would still be able to bluff him, the Asian kid. So then, of course, the guy who bets $10 folds, and the turn is, you guessed it, a deuce. No spade. So chances are I'm drawing to dead to pretty much anything. I mean, I didn't think he'd check any big hands on the flop with only one player left to act after him, so I was pretty confused as to what he's cold calling this check raise with besides maybe a queen, but I don't know. He can have 6-4 now or ace-4, and I just didn't think I needed to get my throat cut any further on this one, so I check, and he thinks a little and he checks back. But then the river was another game changer. It's a 4, so now any 6 is a straight. And given that he probably thinks I'm light, now I thought it would be credible for me to try and rep a 6. I do have a blocker to 7-6, which is the stone nuts, or he could think maybe I have 6s or 6-5, raising a middle pair on the flop, just trying to end the hand. So between that and thinking it's likely he's capped at top pair, I decided, okay, now I will enact my plan to bluff this guy, so I 2x the pot, going 340. And you know what he did? He jammed! What? Now, if he did this with only a 6, he's out of his fucking mind because I can just have 7-6. It is too risky for him to be jamming a 6 there just to try and what, push me off a chop? So I don't know, maybe he had pocket 6s and checked his option pre. Doesn't believe me on the flop when I check raise the other guy because he bets so small, so he calls cold. Checks back on the turn, then hits gin on the river. And now heavily blocks me having 7-6. But even so, you can't jam that hand there. It's way too big of a shove, and it's only going to get called as often as I have 7-6. And when I use this size, I'm either bluffing or I have 7-6. I would not have gone this massive with 6x only. So it's extra tilting because I'd blasted turn. It may have gotten him to fold. I don't know, but I didn't do that. And then when I think I did get a good river to act on, all it did was leading to me getting jammed on. Ayah. So I'm getting really angry again. Here's a late position limp. I make it 25 with 6-5 of hearts in the cutoff. And the button calls to the Asian reg again, and now another Asian reg, 3-bet to 135 in the small blind. I called, and the button called, and this was me starting to get a little spewy and stupid, because I know I can't be calling this hand, calling a 3-bet with this hand, without a guarantee to be heads up in position. I mean, there's a reasonable chance it ends up that way anyway, but I should just fold or 4-bet and probably fold. So with 3 ways, the flop is interesting again. It's ace 9-8 rainbow. I got the backdoor flush draw. So nothing to get excited about. But there's hope. Then the 3-better checked, and I thought about betting, but I check, and then the button bet small. Very small, only 100. I was pretty surprised to see him do that. The 3-better folded. It's just me now, and I'm getting 5-1 to call in a spot where my hand improves on the turn a bunch of different ways, but this goes back to what I said before. You have to have such a solid pre-flop range, because if you don't, you're going to get into more and more and more of these really precarious spots post-flop, like this one is turning into, because I have a straight draw, but it will be cold decked by Jack 10 sometimes, and that's well within his range. And I thought about check raising because I didn't think if he had 2 pair or better, he'd have bet this small on the flop. But I don't know. I just called. And holy shit. The turn is the 7, giving me the straight, and it's a heart. So I got the low straight and another open-ended straight flush draw. But the last fucking thing I need, though, is to bet and get raised. So I checked. And depending on what he bets, maybe I'll raise. But he checked back. And the river is another 7. Missed the flush. Full house is now possible. But it should be pretty hard for him to have one. I mean, I think I'm up against just an ace a lot. And plus, I could have a full house, so I bet 400. And he jams again. Now this spot is extra shitty because it's actually really hard for him to have a full house. I mean, ace 7 suited is kind of like the only hand. I mean, 9-7 is possible, but I'm guessing he would just check the flop with that. Maybe not always, but pretty often. But if he was to bet with it, I mean, I can see him using this small quarter-size pot bet. Same as I could see him doing with ace 7. But if he's making a sick hero bluff with aces and 9s or aces and 8s or 9s and 8s, that means he'd have flopped 2 pair and only bet 1/4 pot into both of us. I don't know. I just couldn't see him going quite that small. Or with a set of 8s or 9s as well. But even if you can see him betting that small with hands that big, you still have to also be able to see this guy bluff raise jamming the river massive in a spot where I have a lot of straights. Or where I can block boats because I have 7-6. And plus, you don't see bluffs in these spots. Just hardly ever. Least of all between 2 guys who have never met each other before today. So as difficult as it seemed for him to actually have a full house, it doesn't matter. It just seems even less likely that he'd be bluffing. And I can see him betting ace 7 suited on this flop with top pair and no kicker, and then checking back that turn card with aces and 7s because he doesn't want to get check raised. Just check back and play the river, and then he hits gin. I thought about checking so that I wouldn't be put into this predicament, just check and call if he bets. But I also thought this predicament was quite unlikely to happen. So of course it happened. So I was down about 14 or 1500 at first and got even with the full house over full house, and now I'm down about 14 or 1500 again. And this hand is my fault. I should not have seen this flop, but look, it still is extra gross that it's like the one time I actually do this and stretch the boundaries a little too far. I'm instantly forced to swallow as nasty a predicament as I could possibly be in. Well, that's why poker is so brutal, folks. It's just, this is why hardly anybody wins. 2 more hands to go through. One of the fishy guys who I was afraid to bluff opened to 20 under the gun. The next guy called, and I was next and made it 80 with Jack 10 of diamonds. He also hadn't been opening to 20 that much, but fuck all that. People open all kinds of shit, and sometimes they just use random sizes. I got a really nice hand in position of these first 2 guys, and calling is just, I don't want to call here and just be in middle position with all these people coming in behind me and getting 3 bets sometimes, so I just take the initiative myself. So the original raiser calls, the other guy folds, we go heads up, and the flop was 7, 8, 9. 2 clubs. Got the nuts straight again. All right. And then he donks into me for 100. I raise to 325 and he calls. There's an ace, no club. Not sure if this is good or bad. He checks, and he looks ready to go. I mean, the pot has 830. I have more than that, but he covers me. And, he looked ready to go, but I was still afraid to jam. I just bet big. I bet 560. He jams. I call. He shows me pocket eights for a set, and I hold on the river. So wow. This is now the second time I've gotten unstuck in one fell swoop by being on the right side of another cooler. And this one was worse than the first one. I don't think this guy played the hand the way he should have post-flop, but it doesn't matter. There's basically no scenario where he's not going to double me up on this run out. He's got a set in a 3-bet pot, and he's facing a guy who he thinks can bluff a lot, so, he's going with it, and I don't blame him. It's just a setup. So I'm even, again. And this day, which had started out horribly, and I feel like I was playing bad, or at least in ways I simply don't accept, I managed to hang in there, not let things get out of control, settle down, settle in, I guess, and then was lucky enough to catch a break like this a second time. And I played well the rest of the day, and the final hand to highlight went like this. Another reg joined the game. I hadn't seen him for a little bit. Well, I haven't seen anybody for a little bit, but he's also European. And this guy has shown that he's knowledgeable, but he's also kind of a dope. And he was getting wrecked on arrival, and this guy also has a tilt button where he starts doing quite a bit of dumb shit. So he raises to 20 in the cutoff. I got ace-king off in the big blind. I make it 80, and he calls. And we're deep. The flop is 7-deuce-3, so not much doing here. Thinking I might need to just barrel off, though, because he's going to have a lot of weak hands. A lot. He calls the 80. And then the turn comes the king of clubs. And I think if I bet again that's probably good, but the way players have reacted to me over the years, I mean, it's just so often they just fold to me in the spot, whether I have it or not. And sometimes maybe I am, over-checking these spots for that reason. But it tends to induce a confused response that results in them losing more than necessary. So that's why I've been doing it so much. So I check to see if he's going to bluff any of his straight draws or other weird random spews, but he checks back. The river is another deuce. Flush misses. And I bet small, 75, thinking he'll at least call. And, since he's rattling, maybe he'll do something really stupid and raise, which he did. He made it 450. I called, and he had 4-3 suited, turning 3 into a bluff. Brilliant. I don't know what the hell made this guy think that I would ever fold something better than what he had. I mean, this would have been so much more fun if I could have had like pocket tens or something, because I would have been thinking the same things, but oh well. I guess he just figured he's never beating that small size, so calling won't do him any good, so he might as well raise and hope I level myself. Except that's even dumber. I don't think it's embarrassing if you fold to a small river bet when you know you can't win and you know you can't credibly rep any sort of bluff. But some people don't feel that way, and given how bad things were going for him, he spazzed. But seeing as he had 4-3 suited, I mean, it just tells you that, he's going to have a lot of spew. So it just makes me like my check on the turn that much more. So what started out pretty badly ended up being a pretty good day, but I wasn't happy with the day's performance. I mean, I kept it together, maybe sort of like a pitcher who gets bombed in the first couple innings, but then settles down and still gives you 6 or 7 innings and actually does all right. Yeah, but look, this is not something I could be making anything remotely habitual. I mean, I got to be better than this. I was happy with my play the first 2 days, but not so much this time. I mean, not that anyone was really playing brilliantly either, though. All right, so that's it for this week. I'll be back out there soon and have some more storage of sage wisdom from the opposition. I'm sure of it. We'll see you next time.